This is Generation Stadia, giving you your daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. So for today's video, we'll be taking a look at some news you may have missed. Not all of it is directly towards Stadia, but does surround it as a topic. So let's get right into it. So to start it off, we're going to be talking about Oculus Connect 6's Day 2 keynote speech delivered by John Carmack. Now, if you're wondering who that is, he was the co-founder of ID Software and the lead programmer of many of its video games. To say the very least that he's a well-regarded developer is an understatement. He has been there since Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and Quake. Not only that, but as a software engineer, he's very much so responsible for many of the innovations that helped grow 3D graphics. But what does him working for Oculus and giving a keynote speech at a Facebook event really have to do with Stadia or cloud gaming for that matter? Well, John Carmack stated his support for the cloud streaming future, even going as far to say that it's inevitable. But he said it much better than I ever could, so here, just take a listen.
Dedicated 2D game streaming, people talking about Stadia and things like that. I've for years thought that there is absolutely a future in game streaming. Now, Oculus was founded by some people coming out of Gaikai and other companies that had, felt burned by it, more negative view of it. But I do think, like the Netflix kind of transition, at some point it's almost inevitable. And I think that VR will be an excellent client for it, where in many cases, I make the point that most TVs that aren't put into game mode add more latency than the internet would to your gameplay experience. So people, in VR, we control the display, we control all of that. It should be an excellent top-of-the-line client for any kind of game streaming, and there is enormous amounts of value there. So I'm excited about eventually getting some of that. We don't have anything close enough to in the works, but those are small, tightly focused projects that can deliver a great deal of value.
So not only does John Carmack believe in the cloud streaming future, but he also thinks latency isn't as big an issue as most people are making it out to be. On top of that, he also sees a future in it for virtual reality. Now, for my opinion on the matter, I think he's absolutely right, and I think it's pretty important that someone as reputable as him also believes in the tech. Frankly speaking, the cloud streaming future has way too many benefits to let go of it, and eventually, whether or not Stadia is or isn't working up to par, the point is that it'll get there. The fact that John Carmack also believes it has a place in the future of virtual reality, that excites me. Seriously, I'm a huge supporter of VR, as some of you know, and I own multiple headsets, and this is the dream come true. That being said, before I start going into it, I already made a video on this topic, so if you want to hear more about it, be sure to check the annotation above. I think the other really key thing to see here is just how many big companies are getting involved. And that's where we're going to start talking about the second news piece, how the competition has reacted so far. Now, when it comes to competition, Google Stadia is looking at quite a few names, but let's take a focus on the big two. And without any need of introduction, we're talking about Microsoft and Sony. Both already have a very established fan base and have decades of gaming experience behind them. And both of them seem to have their own cloud gaming solution. Xbox has XCloud and PlayStation has PlayStation Now. So let's start off with the recent announcements that Xbox has made. Some of you may have missed it, but Project xCloud is going into testing this month. In fact, if you're an Xbox insider, you should already have access to this testing. But if you're not, you can still try and register and see how it works. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can sign up. Now, it's important to note that they're only testing it with 3 games currently, and those games are Gears 5, Sea of Thieves, and Halo 5 Guardians. Only 3 countries are eligible to participate, those being the United States, the United Kingdom, and South Korea. Despite the name being Generation Stadia, I myself have signed up and can't wait to try it out just to see how it fares. So expect another video on that down the road, and if you're wanting more information about xCloud, be sure to click on the annotation above where I compare the differences it has to Stadia. Oh, and before I forget, I do need to mention you need to have an Android device with 6.0 firmware or higher, and an Xbox One controller that supports Bluetooth to be eligible for testing. But now we need to move on to the PlayStation side of things and see the major announcement and update they did to PlayStation Now. They've effectively reduced the price in half. What used to cost $19.99 a month now only costs $9.99. Better yet, their yearly subscription used to cost $100 a year, but now only costs $59.99. And for those of you who are unaware, PlayStation Now is very much so like a Netflix for games. It has a huge catalog for you to choose from and stream. The catalog is currently 800 games strong, and 300 of those can actually be downloaded to your local hardware if you choose to. Now, the other major announcement they had along with the price reduction is that they will be doing a Blockbuster Catalog every 3 months. Starting from this month to January, you'll be able to play God of War, Uncharted 4, Infamous Second Son, and GTA 5, and then those will rotate out to another Blockbuster set of games. I'll be sure to include the PlayStation blog post below if you're interested in checking it out. Now, if you're wanting my opinion on all this, well, I have to be very honest with you. I've tried PlayStation Now when it first came out, and I was very disappointed with its performance. With that said, I will check it out with the reduced price, and I will make a video on it giving my impressions of their service and see if it's improved. I do want to note that PlayStation Now has limited availability depending on where you live, and if you plan on using the service on PC through their desktop app, you need to be using a PlayStation 4 DualShock to play it. Now, when it comes to the XCloud testing, I do hope I get in, and if I do, you can certainly expect a video from me giving you my feedback and impressions on their service. Now, from the Stadia side of things, I think it's very interesting to see how these 3 companies are all going at this from a very different perspective. Now, feel free to call me a skeptic, but I do find it very interesting that all these things are happening just 1 month before Stadia launches. With that said, I do hope they all find their consumer base and succeed, because honestly speaking, the failure of any of these really starts to paint a dark picture for cloud gaming in general, and I'm sure nobody wants that. Now, the next bit of news is quite exciting, and if you're wondering why that is, well, it's because developers from CCP, Remedy, and Next Games have teamed up to launch Mainframe Industries. Now, new development studios are always good news for the video game industry, but what makes this exciting for Stadia is the fact that Mainframe Industries is focusing on developing an MMO specifically for cloud gaming. The development team is currently made up of 13 members, and they have background in games like EVE Online and Alan Wake, titles which are pretty big themselves. They see high potential when it comes to cloud computing and gaming, and that's why the studio has been formed. With that said, don't expect to see anything from this studio soon. After all, their studio just got set up, so we're probably 5 years away from hearing more about their project, but nonetheless, it's exciting to see this happen. The fact that development studios are already being formed just to develop cloud games is an exciting fact, and I can't wait to see what they can produce. Now, the last 2 news topics we're going to quickly pass through as they're just really quick mentions, but I thought they were worth bringing up. The first being that Wired UK magazine has put Google Stadia front and center for its November issue. Some subscribers should already be receiving their issue soon, and it should be hitting most newsstands come Thursday. Whether or not we see any new information come of it is still up in the air, but my fingers are crossed. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that SyrupCast, the podcast by MobileSyrup.com, recently had the opportunity to interview Ray Bautista, Google Stadia's business development manager. The interview itself is about 15 minutes long, and I'll be sure to link it in the description below. There wasn't too much new information that was given there, it was more PR talk from Google, but a lot of it is to reassure people who have concerns. And that'll wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it at all or found it helpful, do consider hitting that like button as it really does help the channel out. And if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to hit subscribe and tap that notification bell as well. Now, for those of you who stick to the end of video messages, I do have a question for you. Do you all plan on using exclusively Stadia for streaming your games, or are you looking at other services like PlayStation Now or XCloud? I'm really interested in seeing how many customers are willing to use multiple services to play their games, much like many customers today have multiple consoles to play certain exclusives. I know that I'll personally be using many of these services and seeing how they perform, but I am curious to see what the general consensus is, even just among this group. Other than that, I just want to state that the Discord community is starting to get bigger and bigger, and we're more active than ever, so welcome all the new members, it's awesome to have you here. That'll pretty much wrap up today's video, but a quick thank you to all of you who stick around to watch. The road to 1K is closer than ever, and I wouldn't be here without you. Thank you. This has been Generation Stadia, giving you your daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. And until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds. Peace.